Hello, you salty little turd nuggets. All right, so today is Memorial Day weekend, and I'll be here all weekend because that's what life is, just suffering. Anyway, about 6 months ago or thereabouts, I tried to do a video on Flexplate replacement start to finish because I think it's a good thing to document because if you have to replace the Flexplate, you'll need to see that. If you have to remove the transmission at all to replace it, you'll need to see that. If you have to get at the torque converter, you need to see that. I suppose it would be helpful if you're doing transmission mounts or a few other things. So that's what we're gonna do. Anyway, that previous video didn't come out because there were issues with the camera, because it's all about issues with the camera. You've seen my videos, it's like watching an epileptic seizure. Well, anyway, this is my van. Bought it in 2015. I'm sorry, no, I did not buy it in 2015. This van I bought in 2018, maybe? I don't know. Had 250,000 miles on it, and it took it to about 500. It is the van pictured in the kip swap video from a couple years back with the 3.2 liter custom supersized, super undersized engine. And there have been updates to that. Anyway, but it's still in service. It's still chugging around. Came in because the air conditioning compressor crapped out, and as I was replacing that, I heard it making weird noises on cranking, and I went and inspected the Flexplate, and she's a cracked. All right, you crazy kids, here we are lying on the cold ground, diagnosing a Flexplate, and we have 100% confirmation of this diagnosis. I'm gonna shine my light up here, maybe, possibly. Okay, see that kidney bean shaped opening? The camera's having difficulty focusing, but you see the crack in the top, very top of the kidney bean shaped opening? Right there. See it? Center of your screen, see that little line? That line shouldn't be there. That should be continuous. The way you go to find this, the way you go to see this hole, and of course the one behind it that still has the rubber plug in it, you take the plug out. What I'm doing is I'm moving, and that is because the Flexplate is broken. That is your way you diagnose, and all of that magical diagnostic is contained under this little plate, which goes up. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna do this start to finish. I don't know how detailed I'll be. I'm gonna try. I've been noticing in my videos lately that I'm kind of slacking up on the dick jokes. I'd like to get more dick jokes in there. I feel like the overarching thesis of this channel is useful information combined with dick jokes. Edutainment, edutainment, I don't know. Because I've had transmissions in and out so much, I have a pattern, a path to the way I do it. But I think now's a good time to provide an overview of how this works, to get your transmission in and out for Flexplate or transmission or torque converter purposes. I'm gonna start by doing the stuff that's hard to get to from the top with it up in the air, because if you put it up in the air, then it's difficult to get to the rear bolts. Anyway, I'll prep the top while it's on the ground. Then I'm gonna pick it up, take the wheels off, take the axles out. Then I'm going to do the mounts, the cooler, the electrical. Then I'm going to place the jacks both under the engine and the transmission with a special piece I'll show you. And the final, we'll have already done the torque converter bolts, and the final stage is the bottom bolts of the bell housing that I can get to easily while I'm under there. There is a case to be made for doing the highest bolts last, because you're higher up, so when the thing falls and crushes your face, I don't know, you have less of a chance, but there is no real safety around that. And one of the things I guess now's a good time to point out that makes this a little bit more difficult is on a normal transmission jack, or even on a normal transmission, the bottom of the transmission is flat, so it mates to the jack sturdily, and most transmission jacks that you would buy for that purpose are articulated. They have little wheels that adjust their thing to make this whole thing easy. In the 62 TE that's in here, the bottom is actually round, and when you try and put it on a jack, it wants to roll away, which is very dangerous if the thing's 8 feet in the air. And also quite a pain in the ass because it's hard to align to get it back. It took quite some time for me to come up with what I'm about to show you. I'm gonna show you this, what I made. I don't have a name for it. Anyway, this is a contour gauge available at Harbor Freight for like 10 bucks, and you push it up against something, you know, it's made for trim and molding and whatnot. And anyway, it'll capture that contour, and then you can use a pencil to then make something like this, which is just a piece of wood, but it mates to the transmission such that it's a cradle. And it's designed to fit within the thing. I could actually make this better, and maybe over the course of this video, I'll make another one. This ain't rocket science, but this makes this job doable with one man, with one less, you know, with a hell of a lot less struggle, because many times early on when we did this before I opened the shop, it was just, it like would require 3 people to get it into position, because it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle to get it to initially go back together. Once it's back together, it all goes together, but you'll see. Anyway, I made this little thing, and all you really need is a contour gauge and a jigsaw to do so. I highly recommend you put a little bit of time into this because it'll save your ass. I guess I could show you something else while we're talking about this here at the beginning. Oh, this is nice. I got a 2-shot here. Okay, this thing you see here is what it actually is a motorcycle jack. Harbor Freight, 180 bucks, 140 bucks on sale, that kind of thing. You put it together, it works great. It jacks up. It has this, which is a lock latch, so it's a mechanical latch that can't fall if it has to sit on the jack for a while. And you can see what the general gimmick is. This plate is made to fit there. What's notable about this too is that, imagine as I bring this up, you can see that the platter is moving on an arc. When I drop it, the platform will also move on an arc. That means that your alignment will be weird when you go back in. You have to go back in weird, but this has these little screws that jack up the rear of the thing, so it provides adjustment in this axis. Similar to this, which is a traditional transmission jack that you would jack up like this, and there are little wheels that adjust the articulation of the platter. Maybe I'll try using this. The problem is this traditional, that would work. This traditional transmission jack, when it's all the way down, doesn't really go low enough. See how that's higher than the platform of the other jack? Because the problem is you have to be quite high to get the transmission onto the jack, and then it has to be low enough to slide out from under the van. And very few people have, I'll just talk into the camera, very few people, have jack stands any higher than the 24-inch jack stands they sell at Harbor Freight. So you can only get the van up so high, and in fact, you only want it up. You don't want to have the van up here. It's going to be unstable and it's going to be difficult. So that is one issue about doing it yourself, is that your jack either won't be tall enough or won't go low enough to roll a transmission in and out. But if you're doing a flex plate, you don't have to roll it out. It can stay under there. You'll see what I mean as we go along. I say, you'll see what I mean as we go along. All right, you greasy bastards. The first thing we're going to do is take the headlight out. Now, why would a man take the headlight out to do a transmission swap? The answer is as much as you would think. The mount is over here on this side, and you'll need to be able to get to it. And additionally, this will provide a lot of room that you wouldn't normally have. And I have an ulterior motive, which is I need to be able to film this, and can't see very well. We'll be able to see what I'm doing on the top of the transmission better if I have this access hole. Remember, put your tools away as you use them, and you'll never waste your time looking for them. Headlight out. This is in many other videos of mine, but it's just 10 millimeters, 3 bolts. Use a mag tray like a human being. Headlight comes out, one electrical connector in the back of the headlight bucket, squeeze and pull. Put this somewhere where you won't lose it. Okay, so the bell housing bolts are a ring of bolts starting with here at the rearmost, there, and another one. You'll see that these little black plastic, there. You see this electrical tree is just a thing that sits over a stud. I want to say 3 of the bell housing bolts have studs for these electrical connector things to go on. The rest are just regular bolts. And as we go across the top of the bell housing, there's there's a sort of a bracket that the top two ones go through. I'll try and show that to you. There's one electrical rather, on the top. Can this be seen? That, which is the input speed sensor. There's two more electrical on the back. All right, oh, perfect, okay. This thing is a bitch. So you have to come in here, and you can see on either side at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock over here, if you squeeze that, the white plastic part will push back through this hole, and then it'll pop off. To get the front of the transmission cable off is super easy. I have a video on that. So you just pull, see that little ball there in the center of your screen? You just pull straight up. Here, fuck it, I'll show you. Normally I would curtail my language, but I know you people, you can take it. I can't a one-handed man, a one-wiener dude. Can I do it right-handed? No, but I bet you I can do it left-handed quite easily. This is how you get the cable off. Just pull straight up and the ball will release from the tip of the cable. Shka-bing, like that. And then, I don't know how I'm gonna show this, but you're gonna be squeezing like that, and then this will push back through. Is there anything else up here? Yes. The cooler lines. You can pull these two cooler lines. In my case, I don't have to. The cooler lines can stay attached because the trans is just gonna drop down and go back in. And in fact, that pretty much applies to any of the three jobs we're talking about: torque converter, flex plate, or transmission R&R. But I'm gonna have to remove the two cooler lines from the cooler itself so it can drop. Even though they're rubber, they'll impede. There is a Motor City Mechanic video on getting these two things out. I fucking hate these things. They fight so hard. I hate doing it like that. I prefer to disconnect it at the cooler. That's much simpler if you can get away with it. Okay, what else is there to know back here? Not a hell of a lot. We're gonna, just while I have it down on the ground, because it's really hard to reach, especially those furthest bolts, when it's up in the air and then I'm bending over and with the ass crack and all that. So I'm gonna do these top ones if I can with it on the ground, and then we'll move. Most of this operation happens from underneath. Oh, like your mom. Oh, see, I told you, more dick jokes. Need them. All right, while I'm doing this, I should mention that almost all the bell housing bolts, actually all the bell housing bolts are 15. And as I say, I want to say 3 of them have studs on the other side, and 2 of them are special length, and those are the 2 for the starter. If you happen to throw them all in a puddle, find the 2 longest ones. Those are for the starter. Okay, there's one. Ooh, will he be able to get it out still on the wrench? Oh, hail Satan. Oh, hail Lucifuge. Oh, kudos to Baphomet. All right. That is a generic transmission bolt. 15. I'm gonna put all my transmission bolts in a separate mag tray, only because I know I'm gonna be putting them all back in at the same time. You may ask yourself, well, isn't this dangerous, taking bell housing bolts out before doing anything else? And the answer is no, because the transmission is supported by even one, I mean, it's on 2 dowel pins, so even one bell housing bolt would hold it, and the engine is supported, and the transmission itself is supported on 2 mounts. This is one of the studded bolts that an electrical connector goes off the backside of, but it's still just a bolt. This transmission cable, which is really difficult. You won't have the hand strength to squeeze it manually, and you can't get 2 hands on it. And I suppose if you fail at it totally, you could, you can take, I think there's 4 bolts that remove the plate that it's mounted to, but that is a big pain in the ass. There's these 2 little tabs on the outside edges of this that you would normally squeeze with your hand, but you will not have the hand strength to do this. And once you squeeze them, then you need another hand to push the cable back through the hole, which you, of course, don't have. Goddamn son of a cock. Aha! Okay. What I was able to do was squeeze it with yo and push it back with yo at the same time. Technically, in this arrangement, with the left hand here squeezing and this just kind of pivoting, and it went back through the hole. Now, once it goes through the hole, it's smaller there and it comes out. This cable can just, I don't know, bind up anything that's above the level of the bell housing where it won't get in and it won't fall. That should be fine. All right. But I'm gonna stop now and put it up in the air. It's already half up on one side, but I'm gonna get it on jack stands. These are your, I wanna say that the spec is either 23 and some fraction or whatever, but these are your Harbor Freight shitbox jack stands. I think I've had this one since Christmas 1990. And, well, I guess I could measure them. You wanna get it up as high as you can get it, but basically the max setting on a standard heavy-duty 6-ton jack stand should be just fine. Aside from breaking the lug nuts for you when it's on the ground so you can get the damn tire off without the tire spinning and without you needing a helper to hold the brakes, it also might behoove me to break the axle nuts loose. Now, the axle nut is a 46 millimeter affair that you're not going to have that just laying in your toolbox. And when I say axle nut, you know what I mean. I mean the big nut that captures the end of the CV axle. The stub that comes out. You may also have the wheels themselves that block this, so you may need to go to other maneuvers to be able to prevent the wheel from turning while you loosen that nut if you don't have a fancy thing. Now I have a fancy thing because I'm a fancy man. I have the frickin' Earthquaker, the Mambo, the John Holmes of impact guns, and this, with its 1 million foot-pounds, claims, and it will break the axle nut free and take it off. Among other things, this is going to be useful for, but you don't need it as such. What you would need, as we have discussed in other videos, is this, which is a fuck-all big and fuck-all expensive 1-inch, is that 1 inch or 3/4? That's 3/4. Big ass breaker bar. Of course, you could use your regular 1/2-inch breaker bar with a big cheater pipe on the back of it or something. The spec on these axle nuts claims in some parts of the literature to be 400 foot-pounds. I don't think it is. It's more like 250, but 250s, you're not going to get that with a crescent wrench. So I suppose that is a specialized tool. But my guess is if you're got this far, you're into the specialized tools. You'll also need the 46 millimeter. I keep it in a special box marked spindle nut. Look at that big boy. If your nuts are that big, you're a bigger man than I, and you're going to be having difficulty running. By the way, you can see what I've done here. I'm jacking it up as normal, but I've got a little piece of 2x4 underneath the pad, and I happen to know that when my jack is at full extension, that'll make it just high enough to put the frame on the last stop of a regular jack stand. Okay, because every view is money, and I don't want you dead, you're going to test. Say it with me, she ain't going nowhere. All right, kids. Well, here we are at the bottom. I think I got this lit up as good as I can. You know, it's kind of a blessing in disguise because I need to get this job done in 2 days, but I'm not gonna because it's Memorial Day weekend and we're gonna need an axle. I don't know how the inside is, but either way, the axle's okay, but as you can see, the boot is torn and the stinky grease is coming out. The basic gist of this, because all we're doing is trying to get the axle out here, the way that's done is you pull these 3 bolts that hold the ball joint, you separate the ball joint from the lower control arm, and then the whole hub is, once the axle nut is loose, the whole hub is free to float and move around, and thus you can pull it this way, and the axle will pop out, the axle will hang over here, and then you can pull the axle out from the trans. I guess here's a fun time to see this nonsense. Ugh. I'm glad I caught that too. When this joint would have got water in it and eventually failed, that's it, no drive, no nothing, and I'm crashing. Now, let us tackle the tie rod. I'm going to assume that's just spinning the tie rod, or spinning the thingy inside. Is it this one? Yes. Oh, it's already out. It's already loose from its thing. What I'll have to do here is hold it with that. And what'll happen in this case is I'm just probably going to crash it into the rotor there. If that'll give me enough. And this tie rod end will just lay off to the side, and now the whole hub will be free to release once I do the axle nut, which I'm about to do. Isn't that exciting? Let's go do that, you and I. The wrong direction, don't do that. Your daddy. God, that's a lot easier than what we've done in the past. Okay, and now I should explain. I suppose I'm going to have to. This is not a proprietary tool. This is a piece of Dodge truck suspension that we made many years ago, and it fits. I guess I am going to have to illustrate this for you. Because you deserve it. You deserve the best, you little furry boxed bitches. Oh, okay. There's a hole, like a lady I know, in the upper control arm that I have my thing going into. And the idea is that we're gonna push down on this bar, and that's going to pull the lower control arm down, and that's going to separate it. The ball joint, it has a pocket sort of thing on top of it, and that's going to separate it, and that's going to allow this axle, which is now probably free to move, yeah it is, to come out. Now, as you may see, I have one of my buckets under there, which I need to reposition, just to make sure if I do actually get it all in one whack, then some transmission fluid is likely to come out. Try and do this from the top in the most likely way, which is the bar in my armpit. Okay, now it is released from the ball joint. And now I could also push the axle out from this side, which I think is what I'm going to do. I think I get more, I get more on it from this side. I'm calling it more on. This is the part where you pinch your fingers. Okay, now that can just rest there. It's hard, difficult to show, but very easy to understand. You just put your pry bar in behind the axle and pry forward, and it'll come right out. Out is easy, in is hard. And here's another chance to lose some teeth. As I remove this, it's going to want to fall and hit me in the face. And the fluid will go everywhere. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, no fluid is coming out. I wonder if that tells me I'm low. But anyway, look, I'm Jack LaLanne. I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can see what happens is when the boot tears, which I don't know why this one tore, water will get in there and corrode the joint. Now this joint is okay, which is why this axle isn't chattering, but it's only a matter of time. Hi, boys and girls. Hi. Side-eyed. I'm going to skip showing you this whole procedure on the other side because it's identical, and because I have in the axle removal video, do I show it in? No, I don't show it in there either, but it's identical. It's just the passenger side. The only difference on the passenger side is something I will show you, which is the what's called the intermediate shaft, or the carrier, the carrier, which has a carrier bearing on it. Basically the gimmick is this. As you're looking to the rear of the van, the driver's side is here and the transmission spins it, and the passenger side is all over here, but there's a shaft that transfers, and that shaft bolts to the back of the engine, and so the axle stub is shorter. Your axle is not 5 feet long on the other side. I'm going to take it out in one piece. You don't have to. In the other video, axles, yeah, I separated it at the carrier bearing. You don't have to do that. You can just take those 3 bolts out that hold the carrier bearing to the back of the block, and then the whole thing will come out. I just find that easier. I mean, you got to take them out anyway. Okay, kids. All right, hopefully we can get this. You'll notice that this van has a leak. Because I've done this a bazillion times, the tool to use is a flex head, or I guess you get a straight one, but the important thing is it needs to be fairly long, and it's 16 millimeters. This is called the carrier support bearing, or carrier bearing. And it's not that difficult. The first time I did it was crazy difficult. There's the air compressor kicking on. But there's 3 bolts arranged in a triangle shape. I guess I could try and do this. I don't know if this will work. Well, I hope it works. 3 bolts arranged in a triangle shape. Do the rest. But you can imagine if you're with a shorter ratchet, you won't have enough torque, and you kind of need the swivel head to sort of get in here. I don't know. It can be a battle. All right, that one's loose. That's 2 of them loose, and now I'm going for the top one. Every possible bit of shit is falling into my eye. Once these 3 come off, you'll see what happens. See the axle move? Because it's No longer secured to the back of the block. And all we care about is that this, hopefully you can see that. I guess I don't want to keep my light in the way, but that swings out of the way so that the axle you'll be able to pick it up and walk it out. And you can see that now it kind of moves. All right, that'll come down. That can release. There we go. Okay. Again, this is somewhat of a finagle, and I have no way to show it to you, but the little triangle thing is rotating on the carrier bearing, and it kind of has to turn a certain way to walk out. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but otherwise the axle, because it's just set into the transmission side, yeah, this has to pitch, and I can already tell it went too far. There we go. Somewhere in between. There we go. Okay, this is where you lose your tooth. Wonder if that means we're low on fluid since none came out. Oh, my balls. Oh. Here is your axle, and here is the triangle bracket as it bolts up to the block. That would be the block, and you can see it ain't rocket science. This one's pretty shitty. Oh, it's walking. I didn't even notice that. She's a goddamn lovely man. She's a lovely